Welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast, featuring author and ministry leader Kent Evans and business executive and military veteran Lawson Brown. This is a show for you, Dad. You want to be a godly and intentional father. Unfortunately, you've turned to these two knuckleheads for help. Let us know how that works out for you. Before we begin, remember this: you are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose. Please welcome your hosts, Kent and Lawson.
Hello, Kent. Good to see you, as always.
As always.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Not really. Hey, man, I'm excited about today. I like the way we're approaching this. I feel like we're going back, maybe to a little bit of a regrounding in what's important to dads, and that's super critical for me. I pray that what we're doing is honoring God. It's providing some value and is useful to the audience of fellow dads out there. And so, there was a survey that was done asking dads what is their biggest struggle, and we got about 150 responses. And then as we go through them, it's been really interesting, and I love how you did the background work to take each of those responses and then categorize them into kind of certain common themes. Today's theme is going to be about time, and it is something that rises to the top when you talk to dads nowadays and ask them, what do you struggle with when it comes to your family and your lifestyle and all that. It's time. Everybody is too busy. Agenda's too packed. And so I'm excited to dig into this. It's something that I think will be, find relevance out there in the world. And it's also cool that, we get to hear from these guys directly through this feedback loop. And so, it's not like we are sitting back wondering like, I wonder what the dads would say, when you ask them this question. We actually get to see what they wrote, and I love that. So did I miss anything there?
No, man, I'm excited to dive into today's topic.
So
who goes next? Do you go next? Do I go next? We worked this out perfectly in the pregame.
Yeah. Hey, talk about Aaron. Let's start with him, because I think he summed up a lot, and it rang true with me as well.
Yeah. We went into the answers that we found. We tagged all these answers, and we tagged them, like you said, with certain topics. And one of the topics was time, and we don't have enough, and everybody's too busy. And so we went in and handpicked, and it was easy because, like, literally in 3 minutes as we prepped today, I found 3 more. It's so easy to find these comments from dads, and I'll bet a dad listening right now who's doing something, he's multitasking more than likely, right? More than likely. And
totally.
You know who you are.
Right.
You know who you are.
Right now, as he's listening, he
right?
went, oh yeah, let me stop. Let me listen.
You're working out, or you're driving, we're using even podcasts. I think podcasts have exploded because they allow us to make use of like our commute time in a car, for example.
Totally.
And we're trying to like cram it in. So even the fact that, our podcast has 20 some odd thousand downloads is because men are so busy and dads are so busy that they're listening to us while they're working out or cutting the grass or heading to work. So here's how Aaron said it. This guy, Aaron, which is as I read his, I just started to laugh, and then I started to cry, and then I started to laugh and then cry some more. He says, how do I juggle it all? Work, exercise, Bible reading, prayer, being a husband, father, good nutritional choices, sleep, downtime, service to the church and family, spending wisely. I'm not making this up. This is like direct quote. Then he said, everything I just listed is essential, but there are only so many hours in the day. Inevitably, I feel like I am out of balance. 2 days will pass and I haven't read my Bible, or I haven't spent enough time interacting with my children, or affirming my wife, or exercising, or eating right. I feel like I'm always sacrificing something. Inevitably, I put myself on the back burner, and then my health suffers. So Aaron talked about, golly, what a list of things. And we all know we could make the list even longer. There's things I didn't list for sure.
I'd like to find the guy that heard that and goes, I don't relate to that. Like that's
Who is this? Who is this errand person?
That's an odd thought. I always feel like I'm sacrificing something and not enough time. I cannot relate to that.
A few more. So Patrick said it this way. Patrick said, it's tough for me to prioritize my time as a father and make sure that I'm still being the spiritual leader as well as the provider, husband, and father. And then Nick said, my biggest challenge is focusing and making plans to spend with my kids. The weeks fly by so fast, and it seems hard to prioritize activities with my kids that aren't built around school or sports activities. And then finally, Terrence said it this way. My greatest challenge right now as a father is having to spend more time providing than personal and quality time with them. I assume he means his family and children. As I'm building my own business, I'm missing out on family time. So I hear prioritize, I hear spiritual leader, I hear time, I hear juggling, I hear balance, I hear schedule. And I bet every dad listening to this can relate.
Yeah.
On some level, this is common. In fact, we've got surveys dating back, Lawson, 5-6 years at Manhood Journey and Father on Purpose. And the same pattern seems to represent itself, where if you ask a dad what his biggest challenge is, you're going to hear from a lot of those dads. They're at some point in their answer, it's going to have something to do with there's just not enough time.
Yeah. Yeah. And just listening to all those, it's like, ugh. Man,
I need to take a shower.
It's tiring to.
It's exhausting.
But it's certainly valid, and I wonder why. Like, I wonder why it's so hard to do that now. Is it if you go back 1,000 years, would they have said the same thing, or is it today's culture? Are we battling things differently today than might have been done back in the? I don't know. In fact, I'm thinking about like my grandfather. Grandfather ran a farm, and back then there were 2 TV channels that worked, and there was like maybe 3 shows in a week, that would take priority time. We sat down at the dinner table. We sat out on the back porch. It feels like in my memory, looking back on that time as a boy through, almost college, the times that I would spend out there on the farm were just like slow down. We're together. We've got this opportunity to rest and think and be together. And sometimes those times would go without words even, and we just would sit. Yeah. And I feel restful thinking about that time versus like today. It's even like on a lazy Sunday, I have a real hard time like doing nothing. I can't just do nothing. And so I asked myself, is it because I've been trained now over all this time of every hour's got to have something. If I have a big wide open, like something got canceled literally today, my afternoon got canceled, meeting wise, business wise. Yeah. And so my first reaction was not, let me rest in this and see what I can get done creatively and productively on health or well-being or something like that. It was, okay, good. Now that's gone. Now what can I plug in immediately? And so it's like, we're all so busy. Is it because we're trained and because we're wired to just keep going and going and going and not reflecting back and saying, am I doing this right? Are my priorities in line with what my strategy on being a dad is, my desire, my long-term desire on being a good godly father that does things right and takes the right amount of time for certain things? What do you think about that? Man,
last night, April and I were talking, and I said we were going to do this episode about time and time management and priorities and so forth. And she said, sometimes the reason that like I'm so busy with Manhood Journey stuff is because I don't know exactly what's the most important thing to chase. So for example, should I be recording more podcast episodes? Should I be writing more books? Should I be creating more blogs? Should I be hiring more staff? Should I be out developing more donors and fundraising? Should I be planning another event, et cetera, right? The list goes on and on for what all could you do to support a nonprofit ministry. And that's a content producing ministry, for example. So like produce more content, get more money. Like it's never ending, right? It's never ending. I remember reading the book. I think it was it David Smith who wrote Getting Things Done? I think, or David Allen. I can't remember. But
yeah, David Allen.
David Allen. The book, Getting Things Done. Great book because he talks about the difference between
great book,
blue collar work where you build something and you know at the end of the day, if you were supposed to build 100 widgets and the 100th widget comes off the line, you're done. You can look at it and you can see, look, my work is done. Or if you're cutting grass, it's one of you cut the grass has been cut. Like there's an end. And he said, the problem with white collar work is it's endlessly refinable. And he posed a question in the book that resonates with me. Like I'm going to give 2 speaking keynotes, actually 8 talks in about a 10-day period here in about a month. Right.
Wow.
And of those 8 talks, I've got to build all of them. And one of the questions he asked in the book was, how long could you spend working on that presentation? And we've all been there. If you work in a job where you've ever presented anything on a PowerPoint or to your boss, or you've given the financials, at some point you just walk in and give it. You never feel like you had enough time to finish it. Why is that? Because you could always refine it. You could always do one more layer of analysis. You could do one more study. You could talk to one more customer. You could do one more piece of marketing collateral. Like there's just no end to white collar work. And so he talks in the book about one of the arts to doing the kind of work that a lot of the white collar guys do is you got to put edges on your work. He calls it edgeless work, actually, is the word he used. Your work is edgeless. And if you let it, it'll just dominate you. And I think that's part of this.
Who says that?
David Allen in the book, Getting Things Done. And he just talks about your work is edgeless. And so we have to put an edge on the work, right? So I think part of it is that. Part of it is, spiritually speaking, we aren't observing some of the things God told us to observe. And then part of our curse, if you will, or part of the consequence, I should say the consequence of not observing that is time feels like our enemy, feels like we're always getting lost in time. I think third, the volume of information coming at us on the internet and our devices doesn't help. I think that we have an illusion of control. We've got like manned space flight and we have roads and we have indoor plumbing. And so like there's things that we believe as a society, as humans, we can now control. And if you were a farmer, you know what you didn't control? The sun and the weather. And, now you did control how often you hoed the ground. You did control how you went out and took weeds out. There were things you could control, but the big things, water and sun, you knew where you were kind of at the mercy of God. And so there was more of a balance between what can I do through my own human effort and what do I just have to rely on God for? And now we've got this industrialized society where, gas is at gas pumps and food's at the grocery. And I feel like I'm more in control of my entire destiny, which just makes me want to grip it all the more tightly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I wrote something down thinking about this, and it was like I use Microsoft Outlook like exclusively. And so what that does
this
is
show brought to you by Microsoft Outlook,
our new sponsor. They don't even know it. But what it's done is it's bred this immediate reaction in me. If somebody says, "Hey, we ought to get together," it's like I before I even respond, I'm reaching for my device.
Oh yeah.
To start figuring out where and how to plug it in. And I don't like that. I think I also remember another book. So I've read the David Allen Getting Things Done. I forgot about that edgeless piece. That's good. Another one called Margin. Have you read that? Where you purposely build in space into your day with your money. Yeah. You allow for the unknown that's going to come to have a place because you've planned in advance to have margin in your life. You've planned extra ability into your life. And And
Lawson, today I was trying to make it here on time
Right.
to do our podcast recording on time management.
Right. That's so funny.
And I was behind a guy who I'm texting you and Hunter going, I'm going to murder this guy if he does not pick up the pace because I got to get to my podcast recording on the show on time management.
Yeah, because you had zero margin.
Because I had zero margin.
Come sliding in sideways to record a podcast on time management. Guys, you don't need to be listening to us. We both have
today's our last
major
episode.
problems.
I mean, seriously, go find some credible sources to help you. Hey, but to that point, we're not just going to roll around in the mud about time management and woe is me and life is hard and there's too much to do. That's true for everybody, right? That's true. I mean, Albert Einstein had 24 hours in a day. Marie Curie had 20. Mother Teresa had 24 hours in a day. The amount of hours in the day haven't changed. And so what's got to change is our perspective on those hours, how we utilize them, and what we call a win, right? So Lawson, let's pivot just a little to sharing some stories of how you and I have tried to manage this in our own lives. And let's make sure the back portion of this episode, we give dads just some ideas. Some will be a little bit controversial. They may sound like taking certain things off your calendar that you or your family have fallen in love with. But I think the backdrop of this is if you're listening to this episode and you got diagnosed with a health problem, and if it were a significant health problem, all of a sudden you'd find time for the treatment. Like somehow it would go to the top of your agenda. Yeah. Because it became that important to you. Right.
And so look, even if it's somewhat like, look, well, first of all, I don't have all the answers. I'm learning.
That's not what you said when we started. You told me you were going to bring all the answers on this show.
You keep quiet, Kent, and let me handle this because I've got all the answers. But to your point, like, let's say if you're, I'm talking to you, Dad. If you are open to this, then can we diagnose ourselves with a problem called lack of time? Feeling in our life. And so like you just said, if you're diagnosed with something, I bet you'll find a way to get the treatment. And so what is the treatment? What are we trying to figure out here? And I think I do have a problem. I travel a lot. My life is just busy. And I want to hit on something as well. I said about Outlook and using my device constantly. There are people listening that don't relate to that because, like you said, the farmer, or in my case, I think about the guys in our fabrication shops. They're doing a certain number of welds or threads on this steel pipe every day. And I've been walking through our shops before with someone, and it comes 2:30 or 3:30, whatever the time is. They get in real early, so they clock out and go home at what I would consider to be an early time of the day, 2:30. But they've been doing it since 6 a.m. And I have found myself watching them leave with a bit of like envy, going, they didn't grab their laptop and they're they're done. Now that doesn't. I'm reading too much into that situation because they may go do something totally else, different and more and all that. But they have an end to their job. And like our sprinkler fitter contractors, they work on a job and they finish that day and they put their tool down and they go get in their truck and leave, and their work is done. So it's made me, listening to you before made me think of this guy, Malcolm. He's a CDL truck driver, over-the-road truck driver for us. Oh my gosh, great, just salt of the earth. I love this guy. And so his job is he shows up at 4 a.m. to get his truck. Yeah, super early because he may have a long distance to go, and these jobs start at 7, 8 in the morning, and he's got to be there on site, and then deliver and drive all the way back in an 8-10 hour day. And so I wonder, I was talking to him one afternoon. We were sitting on the back dock, and time management came up and kids, and I said, how do you handle, like, you're always, where you're going to be every day, from call it 4 or 5 a.m. until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that he stopped me. He goes, my wife gets the kids up. She makes the breakfast. She gets them on the bus. He goes, I can't remember when I last was there to get them off to school. And I was like, man, how does that affect your, we were talking about being a dad and stuff like that. I said, what do you do with that? And he goes, we have found other things that I can do. I miss that. And I don't like that I miss that. He goes, but I'm home every day at 3. I don't miss them getting off the bus. I'm the first dad at the start of every practice. I pick them up from school. And so I have from 3 to 10, I have 7 hours a day that I make sure that because I'm gone in the morning, I never miss an afternoon. And, I was like, you know what, there's just different ways. We're all doing all this different stuff. I think about nurses and doctors that, they can't just clock out if something happens, especially if a doctor's got his hands, deep into somebody's body. He can't just go, I got to take off. Or like a firefighter or a cop, they don't make their own hours in some cases. And so I don't want to gloss over the fact that we can make it sound easy. Like, look, we just need to manage our calendar better, and I need to start carving out more time on my Outlook, and then guys are out there listening going, dude, that is just not how my life operates.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing about time is, like, if you're short on money, you may have options to be able to go create more money. Like, you can kind of work harder or get more money. Like, you can affect certain commodities in your life. Time you can't affect. Like, it's absolute linear in that you can't create more time, right? So if you said to me, hey man, you need to go buy another house, then I start thinking in my head, I'm going to need more money. Like, so I think I'm going to need to increase the asset that I have to go buy the house. Where the opposite is a little more true when we're talking about time.
Yeah.
If I say, hey man, your calendar's too full, you can't go create more hours.
Right.
Like the answer isn't sleep less.
I was about to say, unless you can figure out, crack the code on only need 1 hour of sleep.
Exactly. So, and even then it is at some point a finite resource. Even if you could go unsleeping all the time, you're going to hit the ceiling called 24 hours, right? Even I'm sure unsleeping is not a word. I know. Yeah. So for us, it really, the question about time is not so much a question about time. It's a question about priorities. Even several of our guys, as we read these quotes, they said, man, it's hard for me to prioritize my time. Yeah. This one guy said, it's hard to prioritize my activities. And Aaron said something about prioritizing. And so it's, or even balance or sharing the time. And so it's so important that we understand time from that perspective. So it's more about, do we feel like we're slotting in the most important things into our schedule? So like, as an example, I still have a young son at home. He's 7. And here's what I know. When I am sitting on the floor, and it might be 5 or 10 minutes right before bed, when I'm sitting on the floor with him, reading a book to him before bed, I don't think to myself, gosh, I wonder if I'm spending my time wisely right now. I know that the days are evil, right? Like Ephesians 5:16 says, make the best use of the time because the days are evil. I've got a son who's married and lives out of town. So I experience right now the two ends of the fatherhood spectrum. I've still got a boy who will crawl up in my lap and let me read him a book. And I've got a boy who might call me once a week or, and I'm not saying like he ought to call me more. I'm saying that's just reality of parenting. And so for me, we've got to train our minds to properly value the time we are spending, so that we don't get to the end of the day and go, gee, I wonder if I spent today wisely.
Yeah.
And to your point, some of us have demanding jobs that have a schedule all their own. Man, that is what it is. Yeah. But even so, we all know those stories of the guy, who works second shift, but comes home and takes his kids to school before he goes and catches his shower and his nap, right? Like we all find ways to work it around our schedule. So what I'd love to do is have the back portion of our episode today. Let's talk a little bit about what are some ways, if a guy's listening to this and go, yeah, man, shoot, I'm with these guys. I'm with Aaron and Patrick and Nick and Terrence, and I ain't got enough time and I don't know how to break it up and I feel like it's out of balance. What are some things that we can say to help that dad? And let me start with a couple, and then Lawson, you take it over from there. One is, clearly you're not alone. And sometimes just that is a good reassurance to remind us we're all wrestling with calendars maybe too full. Welcome to the club. But just commiserating and going, well, we're all in this sinking boat together doesn't mean we don't start rowing, right? Doesn't mean we don't start trying to fix the holes. And so we can commiserate for a split second, but let's move on. One is when you think of time, what is something you can cut from your schedule? I have a friend who has for a couple of years wanted to write a book. And I told him, I go, hey man, it's like 100 to 200 hours of your life, 100 to 200 hours you're going to spend writing a book. The question is not, should you write a book or, how long will it take? The question is, where will those 200 hours come from? So is it, you're going to, work less. You're going to skip lunch every other day. You're going to go home an hour later. You're going to get up an hour earlier. You're going to devote, what is it? Where will the time come from? Because what we know is we're reaching into a finite bucket. It's 24 hours a day and minus the sleep. And so we're reaching into this 14 awake hours or 15 awake hours a day or however many. We're reaching into that finite bucket. And so where's it going to come from? And that for us is the challenge, I think, as dads, is where will the hour a day, half hour a day, 2 hours a week, 5 hours a week, where will that time come from? And what are we going to give up? And for some of us, it's actually a really easy answer. Like I know some, to your point, you may be an ER doc and it's a harder answer, but for some of us, that time is not hard to find. It may be difficult to apportion. And what I mean by that is, we had a guy on the podcast yesterday, Lawson, who I think his episode will have already ran by the time this one comes out, or not. I don't know the sequence, but bottom line is he talked about enjoying the game of golf, but just being in a season where with young kids in the home, he couldn't justify those 5 or 6 or 7 hours a week or every other week. And so he's gotten a lot worse at golf and doesn't play much golf. Now, am I telling every dad out there you should give up 100% of your hobbies and do nothing at all? No. However, what if you could kind of make your kids your hobbies? What if you could find some new hobbies that involved your children so that time is doubled up and you find it's already on your calendar, you repurpose it and you pivot it towards something where you could pull your kids or family into, as opposed to just being me time or alone time. Maybe that's one area where guys could find some time in their calendar. What are some other ideas?
He also said, you know what, maybe down the road, the day will come where I can go play golf a good bit more again. It's not a one answer from then on forever. Our lives change and our situation changes. I see where you wrote Psalm 90, verse 12. So
I didn't write it.
Right.
To be clear.
Right. I see where you copy pasted. Psalm 90:12. Teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Man, I'm so glad you did that. Talking about priorities, because there are going to be, if you do this, Dad, if you're open to this, and you're gonna look at how to reprioritize some things. You may very likely have some difficult choices to make, and not all of them are going to be easy. I remember when COVID first kind of really hit, and nobody knew exactly what was going on, and weren't sure. Was this really going to be something that completely shut things down? And for us in my industry, it did for a while. Like we had a really difficult experience from a sales perspective there for a time, and we had to cut people, and I hate that. I mean, it is the worst thing to do in business. We agonized over it, but it came down to a point of there was only so much resource available, period, and for the better of the business, the betterment of the entire team, the other people, we had to make some difficult choices on what to cut. And so I sort of from a context of that, and I'm talking to myself here, if I have too much going on and I've got to reprioritize, something's got to be cut. And I may not like it. I may enjoy something, or I may feel like something that is on the list is super critical. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's make this simple. Can you list your priorities can you list what you're doing and then prioritize them? And then like as if you're a third-party objective advisor, can you evaluate them as if you are tasked with getting them down to only three? And then from there, ask, all right, so of those three, are they supporting your desire to focus more time on your family?
Hey, Dad, one of our ministry partners is the organization called Better Man. I love this organization, partly because of what they do, but also because of the people in the organization. And one of them is the executive director, Chris Harper. I asked Chris a question recently about the definition of a man. What is a man? And his answer was amazing. Check this out.
The definition of a man and defining what a man is the most important thing we can do today. In the 1970s, it was, I don't need a man. In the 1990s, it was, I don't want a man. And in 2022, it's, what is a man? Everybody is asking that question. So if I had to succinctly state what a man is, I would use the Better Man definition, that a real man courageously follows God's word. A real man loves and protects God's woman. A real man excels at God's work. And a real man betters God's world.
Wow, Chris, thank you. What a great word from Chris Harper at Better Man. Dad, if that sounds like something you would find interesting and you'd like to learn more about how to be a better man, go check out their free group study on the essentials of biblical manhood. You can do that right now at betterman.com. That's betterman.com. So, Lawson, have I ever told you, a few years ago, I went through the exercise of trying to create a short, succinct, workable list of priorities for me to use as a filter. Have I ever shared with you, like I have 4 priorities and it's actually 8 words. And the reason I did it that way is because it's the only way I could remember it, is to make it really short, super brief. Here are Kent's priorities, right? Love God, serve April, lead boys. And I know it's grammatically incorrect. Bless others. Love God, serve April, lead boys, bless others. Now that's because I only have sons. And so lead boys is my kids. But that's my priority list, right? Love God, serve April, lead boys, bless others. So everybody outside of my home address comes in 4th place. Now, to be fair, sometimes, sometimes
that's really cool, man.
Sometimes loving God means, doing volunteering at church or taking the soup to that person or helping out my neighbor or whatever that love God might lead me to do. So, it's not always in 4th place, but like basically they're going to come in pretty last, right? Pretty last. And so that's not forever going to be true in terms of my calendar, but it is true when you have a bunch of kids in the house during that window of time, however long that window is. And so I'm not saying everyone should have the exact same priorities I do. What I do think is, to your point, we need a workable list where we can shake things through so that only certain things fall out. Right. And then it becomes, every now and then we'll get an invite to a friend's kid's birthday party on a Sunday afternoon. Right. Bro, you want to talk about an easy no for us as a family. An easy no. Not because we don't like children. We don't like birthday parties. We don't want to bless people. We really try.
Thank you for your invitation, but we don't like children.
We don't like children. Or you. So first question is, what are you serving? mean, let's be honest.
Right.
Okay. What kind of food is it? May
We're trying to
make
make a decision here.
It may make the no a little bit harder. But like, I want to bring this back to, a lot of dads listen to this podcast, right? I don't think we have a lot of moms listening to this podcast, but this is a moment where feel free to timestamp this section of the podcast, pause it, and go let your wife listen to the next minute, because I'm going to rant about wives and how important they are to this issue for the whole family, but also for dad specifically. My wife is killer at honoring the Sabbath. Like, she has fought for 2.5 decades of our marriage for us to take Sundays completely off. Like, she fights. She has pushed against sporting activities. She's pushed against school activities. She's pushed against volunteer activities so that our family calendar is protected on Sundays. I don't feel like my wife is dragging me to 16 different things every Sunday, because she's not. And I want to give her like massive shout out, because in many homes, the mom or the wife controls the social calendar. And she's saying yes or no to every couple's bar mitzvah and every baby dedication and everything. She's the one who's filtering a lot of that. And I think we got to give wives the power and the conviction and the courage and the approval to say no to stuff, because my wife has done an amazing job of that. And sometimes we're pulled every night. We come home at 5:00 and then it's like, hey, did you remember we're going to, our fourth cousin, twice removed nephew's, piano recital 3 hours down the road? And the dad goes, geez, are you serious? We are? Like, I didn't know. And so then he's in the car, and next thing you know. And so I want to let dads know, man, let's encourage a home where we honor the Sabbath. We take that rest time, and we do our best. We do our best in different seasons of life. I get it, to push against some of those social commitments that are not core to the mission, right? We're going to destroy our marriage. We're going to destroy our finances. We're going to destroy our relationship with our children so that we can be busy bees, right?
Right.
And I think in some cases, at least in our family, the one who's done the best of that has been my wife, April. She's amazing at keeping our social calendar as clean as she possibly can.
That's cool. I love that story. I'm glad you brought that in with April. But I'm listening. I'm not disagreeing at all. I think that's protecting that time is.
I love disagreement.
Protecting that time is like the key. That is the key point here, is protecting your time. It's margin. It's allowing for things that are going to come unexpectedly, and then discerning, using that filter. I appreciate that that you were able to rattle those 4 things. Your kind of filter for prioritizing right off the top of your head. So number one, I would encourage myself and others listening. I couldn't do that, and so you have that. You've already had that thought process. I think that's a critical thing. Is like decide what you're going to judge your priorities by. Decide that and figure it out and write it down. And if practical, memorize it like you've been able to do. You've obviously talked about that enough. Protecting that time, I think God will honor that and use that. When I say protecting time, and relating it back to what you just described as the Sabbath. Somebody may be an ER doctor and never doesn't work a Saturday and a Sunday.
Sure.
Like, okay, there's got to be a different day than Sunday specifically. The point is lock it down and protect it with your life, because like Psalm 90:12 says, you got to number your days. You number your days and you get a heart for wisdom, a heart of wisdom. And so protecting that is the key. And so how do you protect it? You protect it against things that are going to misalign with your priority values. At the moment.
And that's what I want guys to hear is at the moment. Like, you may be in a season where you need to put the golf clubs on the shelf for 5 or 10 years. You may not be. but they may come back, right? So that's funny. I heard a pastor one time, which, pastors are up every Sunday. Like their Sabbath usually cannot be the Sunday.
Yeah.
And I heard a pastor one time was talking about Sabbath, and he goes, it's the only command out of the 10 that we allow Christians to break with no repercussions. I mean, you can't murder. You can't like have an idol in your house. But you know what? You can go golfing on Sundays and no one will say a thing to you. And the way he framed it was, he goes, so my Sabbath is a Thursday. He has his Sabbath is Thursdays because, he's up all weekend. And somebody came to him one time and said, hey, what are you doing this Thursday? And he said, I have nothing on my calendar. And the guy said, awesome. So can we have a lunch? And he goes, no. I have nothing on my calendar. And the guy says, well, great. So we can have lunch. And he goes, no, let me try this one more time. I have nothing on my calendar. Like it's like on my calendar.
Nothing fills my whole calendar on purpose.
And he was doing it for dramatic effect, of course, but it was a great message and great line where, like, to your point, if you get an afternoon back that somebody canceled the meeting, we just instantly rush to fill the bucket back up. And it might be appropriate. I mean, you shouldn't just sit around, scratching your head when you should be working. So yes, put something else in, but still there might be that project at work you've been putting off because you just don't find time for it. It's a little bit of a hairy one. And all of a sudden, voila, you got three free hours this afternoon. Right. Shoehorn it in. Great day. But yeah, to that end, I want to give guys permission, right? The dad permission to get out of the busy badge mentality as a dad. Just this past weekend, I bumped into somebody.
God, that's so true, man. The busy badge.
The busy badge.
Wearing it like a medal of honor.
Yeah. And I bumped into somebody this weekend and they're like, so how are you doing? I said, man, busy but good. And I just thought, I'm an idiot. What a moron. Like, okay. The reason we say that is it's true. We all feel busy, but the reason we say it is because the inverse makes us look lazy.
Yep.
Right. So like if someone were to say, how you doing? How are things with you, man? And I just go, man, I'm really content and I'm using my time effectively and I don't feel stressed out. Number one, the person would probably
No, that's so funny. It sounds ridiculous.
But isn't that how we should mentally be?
Yes. Yeah.
But we're just like, instead we bump into somebody at the coffee shop. They go, how you doing, man? I'm busy. Whew, man, busy.
Right.
And it's like, okay, guys, we got to settle her down and we got to say we are next, just for fun. Let's create an army of guys who listen to this episode who have a new word they say this coming week. Lawson will make it up on the fly. Is the word content? Is the word aligned? Is the word wise? What's the word you're going to say when you're tempted to say, man, I'm so busy. Instead, why don't you just say, I'm so stupid. I'm so foolish. I'm so incapable of creating a list of priorities. And I'm just kidding.
I'm just going to say, I have been recently diagnosed with a problem called too busy, and I'm trying to fix it. They're like, dude, I just asked how you doing. I don't even know you. I'm at the gas pump.
That's so great. Find a stranger this week and tell them about your recent busy diagnosis.
Right.
But dads, I hope this has been a fun episode to kind of like kick around the idea of time management and priorities and so forth, because what we all know is we do need some filter to run our life through, because none of us doesn't have more opportunities than they have hours in the day. We all have that same situation. And I do think if we look, for example, at God's word, I remember hearing a guy one time, Lawson, talked about, if you think about how the sun revolves around the earth and you think about seasons, things like a year are mathematically defined by how the universe behaves.
Say that again.
A year is mathematically defined by how the universe behaves. God spun the sun and the earth in such a way where you know a year because of how the universe behaves. Mm-hmm. You actually know a month because of how the moon behaves. It's a lunar cycle. Yeah, okay. Right. You know a day by how the earth rotates and the sun comes up in 24-hour periods. The only manufactured period of time is a week. The day is defined by the sun rising and setting. The month is defined by the lunar sequence. The earth, how long it takes the earth to go all the way around and make the rotations is a year.
A year.
The universe tells us how long a day, a month, and a year is. God tells us how long a week is. God said, I made the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day I rested. And I did this as a lasting ordinance for you to not forget, God created the week to be a guideline for us, even though the universe there's no 7-day magic to the sun and the moon and the planets, but there is the biblical instruction about the week. And the week is, bro, you should work 6 days and rest on the seventh.
Dang,
so
dude.
let's find time
I love the
for
way
that.
you just explained that. Way to go.
Let's find time for that. Because I'm telling you, like you and I have experienced, if you take 100% of your income and you start giving a chunk of it away, as God tells us to be generous, whether you want to call that the tithe or bigger than the tithe or New Testament, Old Testament, argue it, whatever. Bottom line is he says, be generous, bless as you've been blessed. And God says, see if I won't pour out my blessings on you. And it doesn't mean if I give away $1, he's going to give me $2. It's not a vending machine, but he does promise that he will take care of me in that regard. He says the same thing about time. And that is, if I honor the Sabbath, if I honor that week, that day a week, and I rest, he tells me it's going to go well with me. I'm going to be more clear-headed. I'll get more value out of the 6 days than if I had 9 or 10. So dads, join me and Lawson in not being so busy and not wearing the busy badge and trying to architect our lives around something that makes this time problem more content and more manageable for all of us, and your family will love you for it. So Dad, listen, if today has been an enjoyable episode, and again, as Lawson and I always tell you, if it hasn't been enjoyable, beat it. I mean, just turn us off. Don't ever come back. We're okay with people rejecting us. We've suffered rejection our entire lives, especially Lawson, a lot of it. I mean, we'll cover that in a separate episode. But Dad, if you found today's episode helpful, come on back next week. We got great content planned for you. Go share this on social. Send this to your buddy. Send this to your boss. Tell him you're too busy. Send it to your wife. Tell her to quit scheduling stuff all the time. Dads, we hope today's been fun and an enjoyable walk through some of the challenges that our dads face. We'll be back with a fresh batch next week. Hey, Dad, thank you for listening to today's show. If you found this episode helpful, remember, you can get all the content and show notes at manhoodjourney.org/podcast. And if you really liked it, please consider doing 3 things. Number 1, share this podcast with someone. You can hit the share button in your app, wherever you listen to podcasts, or just call a person up and tell them to listen in. Number 2, subscribe to this podcast so you get episodes automatically. That helps us as well to help dads find the show. You can do that through your favorite listening app, whatever that is. And finally, review this podcast. Leave us a review, good or bad, wherever you listen. Those reviews also help other dads find the show. You can always learn more about what we're up to at manhoodjourney.org or fatheronpurpose.org. We will see you next week.
You've been dozing off to the Father on Purpose podcast featuring Kent Evans and Lawson Brown. Now, wake up. Head over to fatheronpurpose.org for more tools that can help you be a godly, intentional, and not completely horrible dad. Remember, you are not a father on accident, so go be a father on purpose.